Also decline, sweet Georgia Brown. They all sigh, wanna die for sweet Georgia Brown. I'll tell you why, because I don't mind not much. It's been said she knocks them dead when she left the town. Said she came by, it's a shame how she fooled around. Well, the fellow that she can't get, all the fellas that she ain't met. Well, Georgia claimed her and also named her sweet Georgia Brown. So that brings to mind something. Before I forget, you can stop. You can stop right now. You can stop. Before I forget, because you see, I get moved into another direction and I forget what I was actually going to talk about. I was going to talk about improvisation, just to give you an idea. I mean, how many of you guys play jazz already? Yeah. Okay. So you know that when you improvise, in order to successfully improvise, you have to have some imagination, but you also have to have some awareness of the chord structure and the movements from one. There's silence because my head is like going like this, right? From one phrase to another. That's not what I was going to say though, but that'll work. Anyway, there are several ways to begin to improvise. Now, I was classically trained, so naturally I know what a C7 chord is and stuff like that. But when I'm reading music, my head isn't as fast as my ears. Now, some people, they're equal. They can do it up here just as fast as they can do it right here. But me, I'm not like that. Most of mine is here. Even though I know what it is, most of mine is here. And most of the development is here. And I say that and express that to you just so you know that you don't have to limit yourself when you're trying to improvise with trying to play that 2, 6, 5, 1 progression. That's what I was looking for. From progression to progression. I forgot what I was saying, but that's the word I was looking for, was progression. Okay? You don't want to be this robot that plays everything, according to the chord structure. Okay? Because that's what accidentals are for and stuff. You want to. I learned how to improvise by listening to others. You see, I was a very, very good classical player. I mean, I could play anything, I could read anything, there's no problem. But when it came to jazz, see, I fell in love with a tuba player who played jazz, and he wanted me to play with him, and and I just wanted to be with him, so I said, oh, okay, because I never was interested in jazz at all, because when I listened to the clarinet players that played the jazz music, they had these thin, thin sounds, and I had worked so hard on my embouchure and my sound that I didn't want to do that, and I thought that's what you had to do in order to play that music. Well, when I started listening to Louis Armstrong, the clarinet players with him, they didn't sound like that. You know, as a matter of fact, there was one named Buster Bailey, Buster Bailey, who had the same background that I had. He started out as a classical player, and he ended up playing jazz. And I'm like, that's just so cool. Now, the reason I stopped the song is because, and getting back to my way of, the way I learned how to improvise. See, I used to sit in with these old guys, and there was this guy named Pud Brown. He was about 88 years old at the time, and he was a circus baby, meaning from the time he was able to walk, his parents put an instrument in his hand, and there was not an instrument that Pud couldn't play. I don't care if you got it from the shores of Australia. Pud could play it. He would figure out how to play it, and he could play it. He was a genius. But when I met him, he was basically playing clarinet, all right? And I was young. No, he was playing everything, but he was basically playing clarinet. I mean, if the bass player didn't show up, Bud would jump on bass, all right? And so on and so forth. But I was cute. I was about 18 years old or 20 years old. And so he'd have me to come up on stage with my clarinet and sit next to him, all right? And because I asked him, I said, I'd like to learn how to improvise like you. So he said, okay, come on up. And he'd have me to sit next to him while he played. I couldn't do it. But I would play the melody, you know, and stuff like that. So finally I asked him, I said, Bud, how in the world do you know so many songs? How are you able to just improvise like that on every song? He says, well, you know, once you learn a certain amount of songs, you know almost any song, because most of them have the same basic progression. You know, like you have a lot of blueses, you have a lot of rhythm changes, you have a lot of songs that, you know, that have the 2-5-1 and stuff like that, progressions. And you just figure them out, and you can play almost anything. I say, yeah, but, you know, I can't even improvise on a single song. He said, well, this is what you do. You get a record of somebody you really like, and you steal what you hear. They play a solo that you like, you take that solo, and at that time we had cassette players. Y'all know what cassette players are still? Yeah, okay. So you get it on a cassette player, and then you press play, and you listen to it, then you press rewind, and then you play, you listen to it, you rewind, and then you try to play it note for note. And again, the reason I stopped this song is because my first solo was Sweet Georgia Brown. I learned that from Buster Bailey off of a recording. And before I did it, I wanted to let you know that, you know, let you listen for it. Now, when you, and it's called transcribing, and you can transcribe anybody. You can transcribe Bird. I transcribed Bird too. I've forgotten that one. But this particular one I remember because it was the first one that I transcribed. And so I did what he said. I learned it note for note. Now, when you're learning something note for note, if the player goes like this, then you have to do that. You can't learn it like, that's not transcribing. See, in order to transcribe, you have to obey everything that player is doing. So if he tapers it off, you taper it off. If he gets louder, you get louder. If he gets softer, you get softer. Then when you start to play that song, that solo, it sounds like it's yours. It doesn't sound like you learned it from someone else. So we're going to start Sweet Georgia Brown again, and I'm going to do a portion of that clarinet solo for you because I don't remember the whole thing. But when you do something like that, you learn that solo, then that forms a bridge for you. And you can take everything you know, everything you've learned, and you can stay on that bridge, jump off of it with your own interpretation, and when you start getting jumbled up, jump right back onto it. All right? And that was my way of developing my improvisational skills. So here we go with Sweet Georgia Brown toward the end.